Welcome to Phoenix Rising with Dr. Z. This podcast is all about conversations about healing and rising from the ashes of your grief and trauma. In this podcast, we will be deconstructing and highlighting the different aspects of grief and loss. I'm your host, Dr. Christina Zampatella.
It builds compassion. And
For yourself.
It builds compassion for yourself, but that is also, as like people that facilitate and teach, have a level of compassion, all right? And that would be a good teacher, you know what I mean? Yeah. And, you know, just to kind of, it's like anything, you don't really know what level of grief, what level of person is going to come in. You kind of have to improvise and listen. And like, even if you're just listening to how somebody listens, or, you know, you're also in like this soup of everybody's nervous system, or even if it's a one-on-one, you're experiencing that person's nervous system as a yoga teacher, because you're synchronizing, you're putting moves together. And that's just like how we operate. We don't think about it that often, but when you and I do the same exact thing, like, okay, whether we're on a dance team or if we're on a football team or whatever, something that we have to synchronize our motion, we're gonna kind of come together a lot quicker than if we're just doing our own thing. You know, it's kind of like with some teachers, like, you must listen to me. And I'm like, well, now that teacher's distracted because they're not listening to them.
Oh, okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
But there's also a higher point of that too. It's not about listening to the teacher, it's about synchronizing with the group and creating that energy. But with that, I don't know, maybe I just kind of went off course a little bit, but with the grief and trauma, I think it's important to recognize that the yoga is going to do the work. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not a therapist. You know what I mean? I'm a yoga instructor, and I have a lot of background, and I'm interested in one, from my own experiences, and then just also helping others, seeing like how it facilitates healing. But an open mind and just not having a textbook for it. I don't have a plan. You know what I mean? But I know what grief is, you know what I mean? I know what trauma is, and I know what compassion is. So I've tried to bring those elements, you know, like, okay, maybe today we just need to find, let's think about universal love, you know what I mean? And that's a good place to start. You know, where does universal love come from? How does it enter your body? Like, you know, what one little thing you could say to someone to just like soften them, or even like say like the tone of my voice, like, just, can I just take it down? Can I bring it down to a really earthy sense? You know what I mean? And just be like, you know, bring that healing like ability and then you're going into the somatic experience again. Okay, now we're into the vagus nerve. Now we're working upward. We're reverse engineering the process of grief through movement, you know, and that's part of the, you know, you always have to believe in something to kind of talk about it, and I guess that's why I'm here. And it's just, the movement is just so simple. There's not a set sequence like the grief sequence. You know what I mean? It's just the movement. You're getting, I mean, you know, you're studied in all the different parts of the brain and how the systems are working together, and which one's more ancient than the other, and where it's derived from, and blah blah blah. But that limbic system is basically what we're playing with here.
That's the emotional center of the brain, to kind of narrow it down.
Yeah,
like
okay, so that limbic thing is, you know, also in charge of general movement. You know what I mean? So without getting it moving, we can talk, you know, you can do one part of it, like say your job is to get someone here and really see themselves as they are, you know what I mean? And then my job, they come downstairs and I just get them to move as they really are. Now we're talking. Now we're really cooking with gas. You know, that's the fuel to the healing process. Is just working. You know, working those different elements. I call it like threading the needle, the proverbial needle. Like, you know, you can't have one without the other. You know, I can move somebody's limbic system the whole time. You know, like get into that motor skill area, and then that opens up. Boom. All right. Now we have solutions coming. Now the fire is starting to come back. You know, we talk about those people that are in grief. Where are they? They're kind of in a abyss of grief. You know what I mean? And I can probably talk about this more with the sound, but you also see that there's a bit of physical, it's like a physical frozen experience that these people are going through.
What do you mean?
It can be just so debilitating to people, physically.
Oh, okay. So if like
where's
somebody's
the
just
grief in their body?
Okay, almost like a fight, flight, freeze, feign dead.
Yeah, it's and then where is it residing in that person? Like where, as my job as a yoga teacher, they say, I can do everything, but I got this bad knee and my back hurts. I'm like, okay, well that's where they're putting their grief. Okay,
Are you talking to me?
No,
because that sounds like you're talking to me.
Talking to everybody.
No, I'm teasing, but
no, but it's just interesting. And
so the yoga, I'm hearing you say, if somebody's grieving, which 60% of us are at any given period of time are, or we're navigating trauma, where yoga can help move that. Like it can get stuck in parts of your body. It truly can. And there's a reason why massage is used in treating, trauma. There's a reason why we use acupuncture. There's a reason why these things got scientific evidence behind them, because we do carry these things in our body. So I think what I'm hearing you say is, like, let's just say, okay, so John's able to provide yoga and sound therapy in a little studio that I have in the downstairs of the Center for Grief and Trauma Therapy. So sometimes we'll tag team on this. Like I'll have a client who'll go and see you, and then they'll come and see me. And I'm telling you, it is completely different than if they just came in to see me. Like it is really cool to see the difference.
I love that.
Or I do too, because they come in, I'm like, you just had a sound therapy session, didn't you? Or you just went to yoga downstairs. Or even vice versa. They'll come here, chew on that, and metabolize it more with you downstairs. So I think one of the things that I've noticed is that there's a shift in people that I can even feel energetically in the room when I'm working with people therapeutically, that has occurred as a result of their working with you there. And so the grief and the trauma, we know. I mean, there's a book, Bessel van der Kolk, it's called The Body Keeps the Score. And then there's a ton of other books that talk about how truly our bodies do hold this pain with trauma and with grief. And so I'm hearing you say, the whole reason why we're doing this is to help move that.
Right.
And to get it out of, like, just not talk it out, but to move it out gently in your own pace. So is that how trauma for grief and yoga, try that one more time, yoga for trauma and grief kind of is like unique in its own respect?
I think what's unique about it is having the opportunity to just constantly work in that, it has an end use, it has a calling and a why. So as you're working with each individual, so we know that our focus is yoga informed, trauma informed yoga, so which one's, it's like the chicken or the egg in a sense. Like the trauma is informing me as a yoga teacher, the trauma that they're walking in with. And this is just how I operate, but we know what's going on, we know what's going on with the person, so we can come up with a game plan for them, just like anything. I just think it's important to listen, and then you're teaching the person how to listen. And then there's like certain poses that are just good for grief. There's certain poses that are good for trauma.
Can you give one example of one?
One of my favorite poses for grief is Sphinx pose. So you have your elbows planted on the floor, your hands are grounded, but you're lifted. Okay. Your chest is lifted, your lungs are lifted. So like in Chinese medicine and like other ancient modalities, the lungs are considered like a place where you hold your grief. Okay. So, so the lungs are lifted off the floor. All right. So you're it's like, to me, it's like the picture of, you've fallen overboard and you're still treading water, but you can kind of see that there's a life raft coming for you. You can see that there's like something to hold on to. It's coming. I get that feeling about that pose, say Sphinx. It's just like your body's grounded. It's not going anywhere. You're above water. You're treading. You might be treading. You might be close to going under, but you're still lifted.
You got some empowerment there.
Yeah, and that's how I translate that. That's one. I really think anything that's really starting to cross lanes in the body, you know what I mean? So something like an eagle pose where you're wrapping like your arms into
one side to another side.
Yeah, when you're
Okay,
like
gotcha.
making this cross-body communication, and that's great for, that's great for concussions and head trauma too, like where you're just getting people to get the left and right organized again. And then also you get into like the yin and yang of the whole thing. Like you got the feminine and the masculine. The things that you're trying to ignite in people are kind of like what is if I brought you into a room, what do you have already that we can work with? You know what I mean? And then that's basically where we take that. And then you also know that you're holding trauma. So trauma is basically I'm not a doctor, and I'm not even a trauma therapist. I just do a lot of study with it, and I work with people a lot. And what I see is, if I can get the body moving, I can get it moving somewhere. Even if it's in your foot and it moves to your hand, it's still a victory. I got it to move somewhere, And it's also releasing. So eventually, if you keep doing it, you're going to release. It might come through the form of tears. It might come through the form of like kind of some shaking. You know what I mean? It's just like letting something go. So it's like, I can't tell you how many times just in a general class where someone will come up to me in tears and say, well, when you said this, when you just, say something like, ask yourself like how it feels to be supported by just the earth. Okay? Like, are you still resisting that? Like, are you moving away? Like, if you're actually laying down, but you can feel your body try to move away from the earth just because you may not feel comfortable being carried. Just like, I'm using this as an example.
No, like the vulnerability of it, like the trauma of, letting something else have not only not control per se, but to provide that, the compassion and I've got you.
Yeah.
The security when you may have not grown up with any security.
A lot of different variables there, and it goes back to you're listening to your body in a brand new way, and it has the whole form of logic. We, even if we tried to write a textbook on this, and many people do. I mean, you can
There's
Google,
a lot of them. Yeah.
And I'm kind of, I'm just a little bit not cynical, but just saying, look, does this person want to help people or do they want to help themselves? You know what I mean? Like, is it important for them to say that they put a stamp on trauma? Everyone's helping, but it's the yoga is this ancient thing. It doesn't need any new improvements. You know what I mean?
Right.
Just go back, like I said, go back to Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. There's 2 statements in there: is stay steady and stay comfortable. Those are the only things about poses in the whole thing. Okay, that's the oldest text about yoga, and I think that says a lot.
Stay steady and stay comfortable.
Yeah.
Meaning, like, if I really don't want to be in downward dog with my heels down, that's like totally cool.
That's totally cool.
It's really good to know.
Because eventually you'll get there if you want to.
But it's an honoring of boundary, and that's kind of what I've kind of.
I like that.
Yeah, when I present, one of the things I talk about is that in yoga, every time you do yoga, it's going to be different. You're going to be maybe a little bit more present than you were the day before, or maybe this time you're going to be able to get into triangle pose, and you weren't able to do it without the block before, whatever. But I think one of the things that's been most powerful for me is when I actually intentionally pay attention to when my body's going, okay, yeah, you don't need to push past this because your ego's gotten in the way.
Right.
Yes, do you want to be in Warrior 2 and your knee completely out and like this and you're centered with the energy and like, would it be nice to have that perfect?
Right.
Yeah, sure. But guess what? You're getting a knee replacement in 3 weeks, like let's honor the fact that you're not going to get into that pose the way you want. And so backing off and going, where's my boundary? Oh, because my body's in pain right now, and pain is telling me that I'm not paying attention to what my body is saying to me. So if I can learn boundaries on the mat, can I learn better boundaries off the mat?
Yeah, that's so beautifully, like, that's the whole story, You know, how long does that yoga practice last for you?
Yeah.
You know, does it end when you get, you know, I've had people like come up to me, that was a great class, John, da, da, da. And then if I don't go fast enough at the first green light, and they might be behind me hitting their horn, like I was like, that's gone, that's gone.
That lasted for that 3 seconds. And I guess my last question for you in this is that, you know, we offer individual one-on-one sessions with you, and then obviously small group sessions with you as well. What would be the benefit of a one-on-one session, and then what would be the benefit? Well, you started talking about the benefits of like a group, a community, and not that there's not a form of community between you and an individual, but
No, I like that
what
too.
what would be beneficial about a one-on-one session?
Just really being able to tailor it to the needs of the person, like both physical and emotional. So, and I think that's where this whole thing, we kind of get like these emotional instructions, you know what I mean? Just from, that's how we're wired. You know, we can read these emotional instructions. It's just a matter of what we do with them, you know? And on a one-on-one, I can read that a lot faster, and I can really target it and tailor it to something. Oh, maybe we'll do this today, and we'll write down some of these poses, and you can try these at home. You're not going to get that in a class, really, like that kind of one-on-one attention. And then also just the ability to be witness. You know what I mean? Like, so as a yoga teacher and as a music teacher and other things that I do, it's really beautiful to watch the transformation. So you see someone that hasn't moved in a while come into 2 classes, one-on-one sessions, and you realize, okay, this person's moving in the right direction. One, they're happier, they're feeling better, they're not really boo-hooing about anything outside of maybe just, you know, their expectations might be a little high from themselves. You know, try to keep that in check, like you said. You know, I got knee surgery next week. Well, keep your expectations low. You know, you don't need to be always way up there. I know it's hard,
especially if you're like overachiever. It's like,
but you just need some. That's why you need a teacher.
That's exactly my point.
That's where the one-on-one thing is.
You go, hey, guess what? You know, Chrissy, you don't have to do that. It's okay. And to have somebody say to you, it's okay not to have to strive for perfection or strive for this. You know, I'm so used to my body working for, you know what I mean, and be in my athletic and blah, blah, blah. But to have somebody go, I see you. I don't see you and judge you, but I see you and say, I have this compassion for you. How can you have that compassion for yourself?
Right.
How can I help guide you in that compassion? There is something so freaking healing about that. And I think that was, I know that we do offer the yoga for the employees, and then like that started out really heavy, and then people started diving off and whatever. But I know that when I've been down there, just having the group of us, and one of the things I loved, sorry, I know I'm pivoting here for a second, and I'm digressing, but one of the things I really liked, I remember this I was going to say this episode, this session that we did, and you said, it's okay if you guys talk to each other.
Right.
And I remember thinking, what a cool thing, because you're not taught that, you know, when you go to your yoga classes. And so, you know, I'm looking over at Danielle, who's one of our therapists. I'm looking over at Danielle, and you know, she does yoga all the time, and I'm laughing because, you know, I'm here in, you know, happy baby pose, and you know, I'm just like, I'll just lay here all day. We're good. I'll just see her, and she's like, yeah. But it was fun to have that banter. And I had noticed that when I went to a Pilates class, this was like early, actually just Monday or something. It was one I had never been to. It was a harder one. And the woman next to me, I could tell that she had never been to one like that one either, because I could see her face, and I like looked at her from like underneath the reformer machine, and we just started laughing. And I'm like, I haven't been to this. She's like, I haven't been to it either. Right. So throughout the time, we're looking at each other going, what the hell are they talking? I don't even know what the hell she's talking about. Right. What do you mean Peter Pan things? I don't know. So having the community of somebody who's able to normalize the experience and to see you, and to, like, when you gave permission for that, something shifted for me that day. Yeah. And I really brought a lightness to it that I needed, because it's heavy for us as therapists. And to have that lightness and the permission, so to speak, from our, you know, our fearless leader over here. That's nice. It was really good. I meant to say that to you before, but I liked how you tuned in. Like you even said, you guys can talk to each other. Like in that moment, you thought, these guys want to do this, and you just picked up on it like that, and you gave it. So I imagine one-on-one, you're really able to get into there.
Yeah, it's nice, and it's just an interesting. I teach one-on-one all the time, like with music students, so I'm very comfortable with that. I don't need a group to like get hyped up to teach. Like I'm engaged, with one person, and it's really some people only like to teach one-on-one. You know what I mean? It's just like it's a certain like thing. Yeah. But I guess you just struck another like topic of conversation of saying, hey, really to bring a little humor into the situation too. You know what I mean? Like a little bit of laughter, a little bit of like joy, and just that's part of the healing puzzle too. That's part of the teaching handbook also.
Got it.
It's not all the only good yoga is really serious yoga.
Right.
Like
breathe in, hold your hand, feel that. What are 3, as we're ending our podcast on yoga, what would be 3 takeaways for somebody who is watching or hearing this?
Well, I think the first one is that bottom-up approach. It's like a yoga class, like let's start at the feet, move to the knees, move to the hips, move to the pelvis region, move to the heart, move to the head, in that order, kind of like it is a bottom-up approach. 2 is to take away what are we connecting with? You know what I mean? What is the outreach to? You know what I mean? And that's basically, I mean, it may sound a little, it's just like love. How are you being touched by this is very important. And then even getting in touch with like the universal aspect of love. Not just like what we think of, oh God, I wish I was going out with them or whatever. You know what I mean? Just like universal love.
Kind of like more of a numinous, like something bigger than
yourself. And then just the ability to not give up on yourself. You know what I mean? That's kind of the whole part of the yoga practice is like it's self-investment, it's self-exploration, it's self-curiosity, it's self-improvement. And then it's internal, it's that as a yoga teacher, I don't care if I want to be helpful. I want to help you make adjustments to your practice, and my job is to facilitate safety and like moving forward. I want you to be, if you're a beginner, I want you to eventually become intermediate. If you're intermediate, I eventually want you to become advanced. And like that meter of just saying, look, you can't start unless you start, and then you can't, you want to keep moving. You don't give up on yourself. Don't give up on your practice.
You don't want to give up on treating or trying to heal from your grief or heal from your trauma. Keep going. Have moments where you're going to have moments where you are stagnant or stuck, or you're not going to go, but be compassionate with yourself during those times. Like if we're really talking about a parallel process here, or utilizing both of them, to be able to say in that compassionate way, it's okay that I'm here right now. It's okay that I felt like I did better yesterday than I did today. I feel like I kind of rolled back.
Totally.
So to be able to, like, if you're going to think about yoga for grief and yoga for trauma, just to remember, and it really can be very much a powerful metaphor for the grieving process. So if you bring it together, it can be even more of that healing experience.
Right. And it's like, goes back to your question, what does yoga mean?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It could mean just what you said. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the mystery. You could substitute the word grief for yoga, and you could substitute the word music for yoga, and you could substitute the word love for yoga. So it's just like, it's really interchangeable, and it's very mysterious and kind of like, wow, we could talk about this all day, you know. But just the importance of movement, having a movement practice is really like what I'm trying to send home, an open invitation to people that hear about yoga and think that it's something, but it's really just an invitation to move your body, okay? A movement practice. And it's something that we offer here at the center, and it's just, it's available anywhere, but it is something that you're going to get a much better experience if you have a teacher.
Yeah.
Just like anything.
And especially if you're like thinking about it intentionally through the grief and trauma lens, like, how can I have somebody who's informed in those ways so that they'll be able to meld the two of them together?
Well, the beauty of doing it here is I get to work with all the staff, and so you can't help but learn just having conversations with people, even if it's you can't help but learn more and more and more about what the specific why is.
It's fun to watch people do both, or even do all three. I like it. It's fun to watch how that changes, and it makes the process. Sometimes it even facilitates the process, that healing process, faster when you're integrating them.
And that's what makes it like a very pioneering resource that we have here.
It really
is. It's not, if you have this pioneering resource and this non-medical like approach to everything, and all of a sudden everyone's still in that medical paradigm, then it's not working. But if we do have people coming downstairs and saying, you know what, on Wednesdays I have an appointment at 11, I go to John's yoga class at 10, my appointment at 11 is a lot different than it would be if I just didn't do that.
Right.
And it's not about me, it's about the person, but it's about just they recognize it. You know what I mean? And if you see that recognition's happening, then what we're doing is working. There's a reason why you're doing this.
It's true. I am so glad that you came to talk about yoga. That was so cool. Unfortunately,
it's like I said,
for everybody,
the word yoga, we can go on forever and ever and ever and ever.
Yeah, I do appreciate it. I'm so thankful that I'm lucky enough that you are here and working with the clients that we have. But I do hope that this, opens up people's idea of what might be available to them, so they don't feel like grief and trauma work always has to be therapy. It can be movement. It can be, engagement and connection with the divine, whatever that means to you, even if it's a rock over here, whatever energy you're talking about. So thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Well, hopefully I've conveyed it in a way that just, it is an invitation, and then, there's always work to be done. And even when you don't, know exactly what you're working on.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. You don't. Maybe you don't need to. Maybe you don't need to think about it. It's the whole point.
But it is open, and it's a transformational process, and that's anything that ends up like that is worth doing.
Yeah. Well,
all right.
You
that was
so
awesome
much.
to talk about all that. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh my God. No, thank you. So, well, thank you for joining us today on this episode about the having yoga and grief and trauma and what that all looks like together. If you have any questions, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can just go right below this episode and ask any questions you might have, and I'll keep an eye on that. You also can go to the Center for Grief and Therapy Facebook page and ask any questions that you might have there, because about once every quarter I do a question and answer episode, and I'll look forward to being able to respond to those. And certainly if you have any questions for John, you can always ask those as well. So thank you for joining us today, and I'll see you next time.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Thank you for listening to Phoenix Rising with Dr. Z. If you found this podcast helpful, please share it, subscribe, and leave a rating or review wherever you get your podcasts. We want to be a resource for anyone who's experiencing loss, and this is a simple way you can help us spread the word. Check out our show description. There you'll find a link to connect with me on social media, as well as helpful articles and resources.